Love family.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Labha Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Jasodhanandana Brajanarandana Jasodhanandana Brajanarandana Jamanatira Vanam Sadi Jamanatira Vanam Sadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dhari Gopi Yashodanandana Brajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajanarandana Jamuna Tiravanam Jadi Jamuna Tiravanam Jadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi 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 Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Hari Vijayacharya Saraswati Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ananta Koti Vaishnavadinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaura Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're getting close to completing this chapter. There's 54 verses in chapter 7. And then we'll move on to chapter 8. And in this section, Krishna is describing to Uddhava the principles of bhakti, jnana mishra bhakti, as Yadu, King Yadu, heard from an Avadhuta Brahmana, the 24 gurus that taught him knowledge and detachment leading to bhakti. And I discovered something. A mystery has been revealed or solved or something. By Sridhar Swami and then following Sridhar Swami, Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur all concur that the Avadhuta Brahmana is Dattatreya. And it's found that this appears in chapter 9. In other words, this section, it goes 7, 8, and 9. And in 9, towards the end of the chapter, Krishna says to Uddhava, text 32, 10, 9, 32, having thus spoken to King Yadu, the wise Brahmana accepted obeisances and worshipped from the king and felt pleased within himself. Then, bidding farewell, he left exactly as he had come. And the purport reads, Srila Sridhar Swami gives evidence from Srimad Bhagavatam that the Brahmana Avadhuta was actually the incarnation of Godhead Dattatreya. The reference is made to Bhagavatam 2:7-4. So, Canto 2, Chapter 7 is a description of incarnations. Chapter 7 of Canto 2. So, verse 4 is describing Dattatreya. And the Bhagavatam translation of that verse, many Yadus, Hayas, etc. became so purified by the grace of the lotus feet of Dattatreya, the Lord, that they obtained both material and spiritual blessings. And the purport for 11.9.32 continues. This verse, so 2.7.4 says, Dattatreya gave his lotus feet's mercy to Yadu. This verse mentioned that Yadu was purified by contact with the lotus feet of Dattatreya. And similarly, the present verse states, Vandito sva chito raja. King Yadu worshipped the lotus feet of the Brahmana. Thus, according to Srila Sridhar Swami, the Avadhuta Brahmana is the personality of Godhead himself, and this is confirmed by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And I came across this by reading Jiva Goswami's commentaries from the Sandarbhas, when he quotes verses from this section, that's chapters 7, 8, and 9 of Canto 11. He says, Dattatreya speaks to Yadu. So Jiva Goswami confirms, Sridhar Swami confirms, Vishwanath Chakravarti confirms. So as we hear, we'll still continue referring to the Avadhuta Brahmana because that's the way that it's translated. But we can know it's Dattatreya. Now, we don't know so much about Dattatreya. There are parts of India where he is worshipped. Two that I know of is Maharashtra and Gujarat. Like in the Juhu temple, those panels that they have of dioramas of different forms of the Lord, Dattatreya is there. He's a partial incarnation of Vishnu, and so forth. Here's what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes in his commentary on this verse, 9:32. Commentary reads, "The Brahmana was Dattatreya, for it has been said," quote from 274, "The Lord satisfied said to Atri, who desired a son, 'I have given myself to you.' Thus, he was called Datta. Those purified by the dust of Dattatreya's feet, such as Yadu and Haihaya, attained perfection of yoga for enjoyment and liberation." Now, enjoyment means spiritual because all of his teachings are abject detachment, brings spiritual enjoyment and liberation. And then he left as he had come, by his meaning, by his own will. Okay, so now we're ready for text 48. This is the Avadhuta Brahmana speaking. "The various phases of one's material life, beginning with birth and culminating in death, are all properties of the body and do not affect the soul, just as the apparent waxing and waning of the moon." So now we're getting lessons from the moon. As the moon waxes and wanes, the moon doesn't change. It's how the moon looks to us, waxing, waning. Just as the apparent waxing and waning of the moon does not affect the moon itself, such changes, now this is a very important word, vikara, it's in the Sanskrit. Such changes are enforced by the imperceptible movements of time. The body changes, the soul doesn't change. No changes. Well, I'll get to it in just a moment. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary, glossed by Bhaktisiddhanta. "Birth and death, as well as other transformations, vikara, are meant only for the material body and not for the spirit soul, just as the apparent waxing and waning of the moon does not affect the moon itself. Such changes are enforced by the imperceptible movements of time, because time moves the sun. And the Kala Chakra, as Kala Chakra turns, the sun moves. And here's the BBT purport to text 48 of chapter 7. "The body undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, maintenance, production of byproducts, dwindling, and death. Similarly, the moon appears to grow, diminish, and finally disappear. The moonlight is a lunar reflection of sunlight. It is understood that the moon itself does not grow or diminish. Rather, we perceive the reflection of the moon in various phases. Similarly, the eternal soul is not born, it does not die, as is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 2.20, Najayate mriyate va kadachit. We perceive the reflection of the soul in the form of gross material body and the subtle mind, which undergo various material changes. Paragraph, according to Srila Siddhar Swami, the sun, listen to this, the sun is a fiery planet, the moon is a watery planet. This is also confirmed by Srila Jiva Goswami and further illustrates the ignorance of modern science about the actual nature of the moon planet. Anyway, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's purport. The wheel of time, called the chakra, is unseen. In the present conditional state, the living entities cannot understand what undivided or eternal time is, because time is divided, like without all the details, day and night, or seasons, or minutes, seconds, hours, or a year is divided to 12 parts. Time is divided. There's undivided time. It is the time factor that causes the waxing and waning of the moon. From this example, it is understood that the pure spirit soul neither increases nor decreases. Rather, it is the material body which is obtained from the temporary material nature that develops and then dwindles. Under the influence of time, the material body is born, remains for some time, and then dies. Paragraph. As the waxing and waning of the moon is an effect of the reflecting the rays of the sun, so all living entities are manifested in various species by the will of the Supreme Lord. Vishwanath's commentary. The various phases of one's material life, beginning with birth and culminating in death, are all properties of the body and do not affect the soul, just as the apparent waxing and waning of the moon does not affect the moon itself. Such changes are enforced by the imperceptible movements of time. Paragraph. The conditions of birth and death are states of the body, not the soul, just as the appearance and disappearance of the moon belong to its 15 phases and not to the moon itself. Jiva Goswami focuses in his Paramatma Sandarbha. This is the super soul's overseeing material nature and how all of that works. Paramatma Sandarbha, text 21. He focuses on this word vikara because it's in this verse, text 48. He refers change, vikara, in the jiva is rejected. Then here's his translation. The various phases of one's material life, beginning with birth and culminating in death, are all properties of the body and do not affect the soul, just as the apparent waxing and waning of the moon does not affect the moon itself. Such changes are enforced by the imperceptible movements of time, unquote. Now, Jiva Goswami here in Paramatma Sandarbha is using the word vikara. In Bhagavad Sandarbha, which comes in the next Sandarbha, he gives a definition of the word vikara. That's important. It's like put your antenna up and hear this explanation. The Sanskrit is simple. Avastantara praptir. Avastantara praptir. Vikara, or transformation, refers to a change in the state of existence. Avastantara praptir. A change in the state of existence. So, in that place, in Bhagavad Sandarbha, where he discusses this is a side note, but it's an important side note. Bhagavan, who is the subject of Bhagavad Sandarbha, Bhagavan has within himself all contradictions. That is, he's not born, but he's born. He's unborn, but he's born. He has no activities, but he has activities. He has no name, but he has name. And so Jiva Goswami takes a verse in Bhagavad Sandarbha from Gajendra Moksha, one of the prayers of Gajendra to Vishnu, saying these 6 things that indicate change, no qualities and faults, guna and dosha. He has no qualities and faults. He has all qualities and all faults. So he then goes down the way of a lengthy explanation of that one verse to say how it is that the Janma Karma Chime Divyam verse, he's transcendental because his births are transcendental, not just because his form is transcendental and therefore he has no material birth, but there's a further explanation, which I'm not going to go into right now because it's lengthy. But as Krishna has no vikara, the soul also has no vikara. The quality of the soul is qualitatively like the quality of Krishna. So there is an additional distinction. Krishna appears in a spiritual form. The living entity accepts a material form. And the material form undergoes these 6 transformations. Vikara. But the soul doesn't. Soul is like Krishna. So there's a distinction, an important distinction. The soul, the covering of the soul, because the soul has a covering, and undergoes these vikaras, or a change of state, change in the state of existence. The soul doesn't, and Krishna doesn't, because Krishna has no material body, which therefore no birth, no activities. It's a nice explanation. Vikara. We're just spending some time on that word vikara. So this is still Sandarbha, Paramatma Sandarbha 21. The appearance and disappearance of the various phases of the moon occurs because of the watery nature of the moon globe. And the reflection of the sun's rays. Period. Meaning on the watery nature of the moon globe. Anyway. The moon itself does not change. Similarly, the body changes its state because of invisible time. But the Atma doesn't change. Dattatreya speaks to Yadu. Paramatma Sandarbha. That was what triggered this research. Again, that was like one part of Paramatma Sandarbha number 21. He continues, that the soul is subject to change is refuted by this verse. Okay, now we're moving on to text 49. Which says, now it goes from the moon to fire. The flames of a fire appear and disappear at every moment. And yet this creation and destruction is not noticed by an ordinary observer, the creation of a flame and the destruction of the flame. An ordinary observer doesn't notice it. Similarly, the mighty waves of time flow constantly like the powerful currents of a river, and imperceptibly cause the birth, growth, and death of innumerable material bodies, the time factor. And yet the soul, who is thus constantly forced to change his position, cannot perceive the actions of time. Bhaktisiddhanta's translation. The flames of a fire appear and disappear at every moment, but this is not noticed by a casual observer. Similarly, the waves of time flow without stopping like the currents of a mighty river, and they imperceptibly cause the birth and death of the countless bodies of the living entities. And yet the soul, who is thus forced to change his position again and again, cannot perceive how time is working. very short gloss of Vishwanath's commentary, as just like the logic of Simha Avalokana, we'll hear what the meaning of that is. This verse is teaching us the lesson to be learned from fire. Well, Simha Avalokana, in short, is as a lion moves, he's looking forward, but he's also looking back. So, using this logic, this verse is teaching lessons from the fire. As sparks continually appear from a blazing fire and then disappear, the material bodies of the spirit souls are constantly appearing and disappearing. Purport, BBT. The Brahmana Avadhuta instructing King Yadu again gives the example of fire, after having already proceeded to the example of the moon. So fire was spoken of before, then the moon, now back to fire. So listen, this analytic method is called Singhavalokana. He's going forward with the moon, but he's looking back at fire influence. This analytic method is called Singhavalokana, or, quote, the lion's glance, by which one simultaneously proceeds forward and casts backward glances to see if anything has been overlooked. Thus, the sage proceeds with his analysis but returns to the example of fire to illustrate the need for renunciation. The material body is certainly an ephemeral and phantasmagorical manifestation of the Lord's external potency. The flames of a fire constantly take birth and disappear, yet we perceive the fire as a continuous reality. Similarly, the soul is a continuous reality, although his material bodies appear and disappear constantly by the influence of time. It is said the most astonishing thing is that no one thinks that they will die, because the soul is eternal. The living entity is prone to accept any fleeting situation as permanent, forgetting that his eternal nature can be truly experienced only in the eternal atmosphere of the spiritual sky. If one is convinced of this fact, he develops the quality of vairagya, or detachment, from material illusion. And Bhaktisiddhanta's purport, it's really short, 2 sentences. The birth and death of the living entities is caused by powerful time. Although fire sometimes appears blazing and sometimes appears meek, the spirit soul is not affected by the various conditions of the material body. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, because of time, which has the speed of the wind, the constant birth and death of living entities related to oneself are not seen, just as the appearance and disappearance of flames in a fire are not seen. Paragraph. He, the Avadhuta Brahman, learns renunciation from fire. The order is reversed, and again fire is explained in the manner of Simhavalokana, a lion glancing back. One does not see the birth and death of beings related to oneself, Atmanaha. The word Archi Sham means of flames. So that's it for this morning. I have a call that I must attend to at 25 after. We're going to have to leave. So I'll speak a little bit, we'll take some questions, and we'll see how far we get. Oh, I'm going to do this. There we go. There's a moon. Nice illustration, huh? The body undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, maintenance, production of byproducts, dwindling, and death. Similarly, the moon appears to grow, diminish, and finally disappear. Since moonlight is a lunar reflection of sunlight, it is understood that the moon itself does not grow or diminish. Rather, we perceive the reflection of the moon in various phases. Okay? Moon metaphor. Then text 48 again. We perceive the reflection of the soul in the form of the gross material body and the subtle mind, which undergo various material changes. So there's some of the stages of material changes. That's text 48. And we're now going to text 49, but I just wanted you to see this illustration. Pretty amazing. Okay, here's the commentary. We didn't get this far, text 51, but we'll look at it anyways. No, we'll skip. We'll go back till 48, 49. Okay, so it's going to continue for another 2 more chapters. Detachment. So that one can, this is Sankhya, one can make a distinction between matter and spirit. And we can learn from matter about the temporariness and infer the permanentness. Just like this particular example of the moon. The moon is there. The moon doesn't change with the changes of the phases of the moon. Now, the moon will come into existence and go out of existence also. It is temporary as well. But how it functions in relation to the movements of the time energy, the phases of the moon are moved by the sun, which is moved by time. Kala chakra. So, changes, using the metaphor of the fire. When a person's looking at a fire, we may notice it, but not really catch it, that the flame is appearing and then disappearing, and flame is appearing and disappearing, and flame is appearing and disappearing. It's because it looks like a continuous flame. So like our life looks like a continuous life, although it's changing and changing and changing. We don't perceive time, we don't perceive Krishna behind life. But a thoughtful person, it's not just going slower, like watch the flame slow motion, like a slow motion camera or something like that, and there goes a flame, there just, it came into existence and went out of existence. Most people are not tuned in to subtle things like that. So, but the Avanti Brahman is helping King Yadu and helping us. Krishna is helping us by speaking to Uddhava. Don't be attached to the temporary things that come into being and go out of being. What's not coming into being and going out of being? Well, that's the perceiver. Not the perceived changes, but the perceiver doesn't change. The soul doesn't change. Consciousness is steady. Although influenced by coverings. This is knowledge. Knowledge and detachment. Supposing someone doesn't have knowledge, then you have ignorance. And this is Prabhupada's, one of his principal complaints about modern education, or the way that people live their lives, is they're not thinking. We're education is just like Ishopanishad described, vidyam avidyam chayas tadvedvayam saha. It's in the name of vidya, it's avidya. It's covering the consciousness of the soul of who we are and training us up in the temporary. Covering consciousness of the soul because of absorption in the temporary. And Bhagavatam, this particular section, like 3 chapters worth, don't be attached to the temporary. Don't be attached to the temporary. Be attached to the eternal. But if you don't see the distinction between the temporary and the eternal, we will, by default, remain attached to the temporary. And that's material existence. When I discovered this description of Dattatreya being the Avadhuta Brahmana, it reminded me of some research I did before when it is said about Dattatreya, not only the high-highas, but also Prahlad. And then how the time factor, the chronology factor works. He spoke to Yadu. He spoke to the high-highas. He spoke to Prahlad. So, what's the details of the chronology of his speaking to Prahlad and so forth. There's lots of mysteries. Like your daughter was asking yesterday about apparent contradictions and how do we handle them. Be patient and in course of time, stay with the scriptures and stay with our acharyas that are helping us understand the scriptures. And we'll slowly start to understand some of that mystery. But, we'll never understand the mystery fully, so it remains a mystery. A big adventure. But the adventure is not just knowing things, the adventure is making our connection again with Krishna. That's the real objective, not just Sherlock Holmes solving mysteries by deductive this and that. Like this explanation of how Sridhar Swami makes this statement, and it's not like by inference. It's on scriptural authority. He's using that scriptural authority to say the Avadhuta Brahmana is Dattatreya. And here's the scriptural support for that. The main process is the process of hearing, so that's what we're doing. We're hearing Krishna speaking to Uddhava, repeating what the Avadhuta Brahmana said to Yadu. And this is the Puranic method. We're hearing from the personality of Godhead, and so we can accept it, and then try to understand and apply that message. See beyond the changes. Although we can't see time, we can infer the presence of time. Because time brings things into being and destroys things. Although we can't see time. We can't see Kala Chakra moving. We can see the sun moving. We can see the phases of the moon, which is influenced by the sun moving. So be attached to the eternal is the message. Let's see if there's some discussion. We have a little time.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Maharaj, the question is like every one of us has a relationship with Krishna.
Yes.
And also their representatives. So sometimes when we see somebody having more relationship with Krishna or something, it sometimes feels like insecure, or like sometimes it's not insecure, it's like, oh, I don't have that relationship. So how should I not go into that?
That's envy.
That's
You
envy.
celebrate, let me associate with this person. How wonderful. Krishna is very kind. Let me become eager to get that kindness from Krishna, and kindness from Krishna through that person that Krishna is being kind to. As long as they're not proud, oh, I'm close to Krishna and you're not. That's pride. So, the antidote is your question. The antidote is celebrating the kindness of Krishna being bestowed upon somebody. Whatever aside from relationship, someone may be a really good cook, someone may be a really good singer, someone may be really good something. And one could be envious, oh, they're a good cook, they're a good singer, and I'm not. I'm envious. It has to do with an emptiness inside. Greed. I want and I don't have. Someone else has, so I'm envious. So the make the connection with Krishna, turn that perception around as an impetus to come closer to Krishna, not compete. Let me try to be better than that person who has a nice relationship with Krishna or can sing nicely, or that's material. And you switch the channel to spiritual. Appreciation of Krishna's kindness, appreciation of the kindness that Krishna has given to someone, and celebrate it. How fortunate. Because association with those that are close to Krishna make everyone close to Krishna.
Thank you.
Okay.
Maharaj, I have a question from yesterday's class.
Okay.
That image of Lord Nityananda kicking the Brahmin, it's stuck in my head.
Wasn't a Brahmin. Shivananda Sain was like a leader.
Okay.
Like Kshatriya, he was an administrator type person, and he was just taking care of everybody.
Got it. But just the fact that, I understand, I agree, it's Lord Nityananda, he can choose to do whatever he wants, but this seems a little intense. How do I take it?
Oh, he's funny.
Okay.
You made me hungry. Take this. And then, more happened besides that. But, he is giving his mercy in the form of his lotus feet, and he may do it in a funny way. Shivananda Sain understood. He didn't take it any other way. So, Lord Nityananda gives to people in a confidential, funny way that other people can't. Like his conversation with Advaita Acharya, speaking trash talk about each other. But it was actually complimenting him.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you.
It's so confidential, it's so friendly. One thinks, wait a minute, I wouldn't kick somebody. If somebody kicked me, I wouldn't think, oh, how wonderful. But when there's intimacy, one can do those things. It was meant that way and it was taken that way. But he spoke differently. You made me hungry. Take this. But you abandoned your duty. You didn't take care of my senses.
I understand. Thank you, Maharaj.
The transcendentalist. He has a spiritual form. He doesn't need anything. It's a loving reciprocation in a funny way. And Lord Nityananda is like that. Now some are not like that. Some devotees, they're right wing. He's really left wing. Okay.
No questions online, Maharaj.
Okay. So we'll continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai.